You've probably heard the word ideology 1,000 times, right? We use it all the time. But what does it actually mean? It sounds simple, but the second you try to pin it down, it's like trying to grab smoke. It's a word that hasn't been around for all that long, but its history is just, well, it's incredibly complex and full of contradictions.
So what are we talking about here? Is ideology a good thing, a bad thing, or just a neutral thing? Well, the crazy answer is it's all of them, and that's exactly what makes it so confusing, but also why it's so critical we get a handle on it.
I mean, just think about all the ways we hear this word. For some people, an ideology is a dangerous delusion, the kind of thing that leads to fanaticism. For others, it's an essential weapon you need in a political fight. It can be something as simple as a system of thought, a coherent worldview, or it can be something darker, like a powerful illusion designed to hide who's really in charge. And let's be honest, a lot of the time it's just thrown around as an insult. So how can one word mean so many wildly different things?
To solve this puzzle, we're gonna go on a journey through time. We'll start with its surprisingly optimistic birth, then see how it got transformed into a revolutionary theory, watch it become a total battleground in the 20th century, and finally, we'll land right here in the present to figure out how we can understand it today. By the end, you'll have a much better map to navigate this very tricky concept.
Okay, our story starts, as so many modern political ideas do, in the crazy aftermath of the French Revolution. This was a time of just incredible optimism, a widespread belief that pure reason and science could solve pretty much all of humanity's problems. So in 1796, a French philosopher named Antoine Destutt de Tracy comes along. And his goal was actually really clear and scientific. He took the Greek word for idea, eidos, and the Greek word for science, logos, and he smashed them together to create a brand new field of study. He called it ideology, the science of ideas.
And Tracy wasn't thinking small here. His ambition was huge. He imagined this new science would be the queen of the sciences. He figured if we can understand exactly where ideas come from, we can get rid of ignorance, we can reform education, and we can build a truly rational, enlightened society. For him, ideology was a powerful force for good. But here comes the first big twist in our story. One of the early admirers of Tracy and his group of thinkers, the ideologues, was a guy named Napoleon Bonaparte. But as Napoleon's own power grew, he turned on them. He took their word, ideology, and he twisted it into an insult. He dismissed them as a bunch of impractical armchair metaphysicians or windbags. And just like that, the word's meaning got flipped on its head. It went from a noble science to a political smear. The next major figure to pick up this word was, of course, Karl Marx. And this is probably the most important turning point in the whole story. He took Napoleon's insult and he didn't just use it, he supercharged it, turning it into a cornerstone of his entire revolutionary theory. So Marx started by using the word just like Napoleon did to mock his rivals. But then he started adding all these complex new layers. For Marx, an ideology wasn't just impractical, it was a system of illusion that actively distorts reality. And this distortion serves a very clear purpose. It justifies the power of the ruling class. So he created this powerful divide. On one side you have ideology, which is a distortion, and on the other side you have his own scientific materialism, which he presented as the truth. Okay, so after Marx, the idea of ideology barrels into the 20th century, and by now it's a deeply contested concept. It's not just a word anymore, it's an intellectual battleground, with different movements and thinkers all fighting to define it for their own purposes. And the meanings just start multiplying like crazy. First, you have the Russian revolutionary Lenin. He completely flips Marx's idea. He says, hey, if the ruling class has an ideology, then the working class needs one too. So he strips away all the negative connotations and turns socialist ideology into a positive weapon for the political struggle. Then, in the 1930s, the Italian thinker Antonio Gramsci gives us the idea of hegemony. He argued that ideology isn't just about force, it's much more subtle. It works by shaping culture and the media and even our basic common sense, until the values of the ruling class just seem natural. Then, fast forward to the 1950s, in the middle of the Cold War. Some Western thinkers declare the end of ideology, claiming the big fights were over and all that was left was just pragmatic management. But here's the brilliant counterargument, summed up perfectly by the philosopher Alasdair MacIver.
He pointed out that the claim to be beyond ideology was, well, an ideology itself. It was the specific ideology of post-war liberalism, just presenting its own values as if they were neutral, objective facts. And all of this brings us to today. This long history of back and forth has left us in a really complex spot, where all those old, clear-cut distinctions have really started to break down.
You know that classic contrast we got from Marx, objective science over here and biased ideology over there? Well, that's just not so easy to defend anymore. Thinkers from all over started to ask a tough question. Can anything be truly free of underlying assumptions and values? And this wasn't just a political debate. As this pretty provocative quote from the philosopher of science Paul Feyerabend shows, even the supposed impartiality of the natural sciences started getting questioned. The point is, if science itself operates within certain paradigms and assumptions, then that clean, hard line separating it from ideology gets very fuzzy very fast. So, how can we think about ideology in a way that's actually useful and maybe a little less judgmental? Well, one of the most powerful modern ideas comes from the political theorist Michael Freeden. He suggests that we think of ideologies as conceptual maps. The idea is that they aren't necessarily true or false, good or bad. They're essential tools that we all use to make sense of the really complicated political world. And here's how it works. Each map, each ideology, is built around a few core concepts, like liberty is for liberalism or equality for socialism. Then it arranges all the other ideas around that core in a unique pattern. And these maps are a mix of reason and emotion. Their goal isn't to be scientifically true. Their goal is to be persuasive, to mobilize large groups of people. They're practical guides for taking political action. So, after this whole 200-year journey, from a science to an insult to a map, what's the big takeaway for us? Well, I think it's about recognizing how these conceptual maps are operating everywhere, including inside our own heads. The bottom line is this: ideology doesn't have one single correct definition. Its real meaning and its power come from that complex, layered history we've just explored. It is a science, an insult, a system of illusion, a weapon, a form of common sense, and a conceptual map. It's all of those things at once. Understanding that history is the key to unlocking the word. And that leaves us with a final question to think about. If ideologies are the maps we all use to navigate politics, it's worth asking yourself, what concepts are at the very center of your own map? Is it liberty, equality, maybe tradition, or justice? What's your non-negotiable core? Figuring that out is the first real step to understanding ideology itself.